Hello ladies and gentlemen, once again this is Jeremy Smith. About a year ago we took a look at Nikon's new D5500, and the 5500 was pretty exciting to look at. It brought about Nikon's new X-Speed 4 processor, it brought about 1080p video at 60 frames a second, and it even brought about a new physical design that was much smaller and much better feeling in hand. Now we have the D5600. Does the 5600 continue to build on the success of the 5500? Is it something new and exciting? Let's go ahead and take a look and find out. Okay, so I have got to say guys, I've got to get this part out of the way immediately. I'm normally a very positive person, and I try to find the best in everything I possibly can. But Nikon, get your stuff together. SnapBridge is terrible. I have no idea what's going on, but you need to get yourself some good app developers or something. Yeah, it's been a very troublesome experience for me, pretty much since the get-go. For God's sakes, it's so bad that there's even a lawsuit in like the UK or somewhere about the SnapBridge functionality of the Nikon D500. So anyways, have to get that out of the way immediately. SnapBridge is one of the biggest changes that you see on the 5600. I did kind of try to pick through it as much as I possibly could to find any other differences. In the US right now, the 5500 seems to be discontinued and the 5600 seems to be completely replacing it. Now, whenever SnapBridge finally starts working, I think it's going to be an absolutely brilliant experience. The whole concept of it is novel, but Nikon, they've definitely got to get things together. I did find a few other like small things about the 5600 that don't meet the eye, and I don't currently have a 5500 in hand to kind of test side by side. So guys, I definitely need your help on that. If you have a 5500 and you can do some comparisons with me and write me in the comments below, I would appreciate the feedback, because I'd like to know if there's anything else that I've missed that's different between these two cameras. Anyways guys, let's go ahead and take a closer look at the 5600, and I'll show you some of the differences that I did manage to find between this one and the 5500. Taking a closer look at the D5600, physically it looks pretty much like a 5500. Although according to some of the specs I was looking at, it's apparently a little bit lighter. It doesn't feel any lighter to me, so of course that's not necessarily a bad thing. The 5500 is actually very small and lightweight as far as DSLRs go anyway, so not really a big deal there. Okay, we'll take a look here. So yeah, pretty much the same physical size that we have seen before. You can see that we have the NFC logo right there. So pretty much standard there. I mentioned in the D3400 video that Nikon really needs to market the new AFP lenses that they've been using on their cameras now, because those do result in some pretty silent autofocus, kind of akin to the Canon STM, but unfortunately, you know, that's kind of a marketing sort of fail in my opinion on Nikon's part, because it is pretty cool. It does work well. I'll make a little link to that test I did with my 3400 to kind of show you how that works out. And I'll be linking to the 5500 review as well, just because this video, or just because this camera rather, is so similar to the 3400. A couple things that I saw as a difference. Let's see, I'll go just a little closer here. A couple things I saw as a difference on this camera. Number one, in the playback mode, and once again, this is one of those things I kind of looked at it and read. I need to figure out if this does the same thing on the 5500. I can't remember. So as I mentioned, guys, if you have a 5500, if you look at this for me, I would greatly appreciate it. Okay, so I'm going to take a few frames here. I'll show you what happens. On the Nikon D500, you could actually go in here, and of course you have a touchscreen, so you could scroll through things just like this, you know, and we can do the whole pinch to zoom thing and all that sort of fun stuff as well. But on cameras like the D5 and the D500, you have a little scrolly bar thing at the bottom.
So you could actually go through photos a little bit faster. Yeah, and that was supposed to be the change on the 56. Now, as I mentioned, I don't remember if the 55 has this or not. According to the specs, it says this is new, but I'm not really sure if you can do that on the 55. So let me know on that. The only other difference that I can come up with, and this is something else that really I wasn't so clear on how it was actually used, but apparently on the 55, it had this function as well, the so-called touch function, which if you go into the menus here, let's see here, you can go under, I was at this the other day, shooting and display. Actually, it's under controls. It says assign touch function here. And so you can do a lot of different things with this. I mean, you can do ISO sensitivity, active delighting. I thought it was interesting that by default, the default setting is actually for the viewfinder grid display. But I find it most helpful to set this to like ISO sensitivity, or set it to like something like aperture, since this camera does not have 2 command dials. Anyways, but what happens with this is, basically, let's see, I'll go ahead and change it to aperture, because yeah, I think having the viewfinder grid display on that function is kind of strange. But basically what happens is, whenever you go into this function, unfortunately I can't exactly show you guys how this works, because the change only shows up inside the viewfinder. But what happens is, when you're holding this up to your eye, of course the sensor switches off the screen, and as soon as that happens, you actually take your thumb and you move it along this area right here, and it's kind of like having a virtual sort of dial. So if, for example, we have this set to, let's see here, I'm going to go ahead and set this function. I'm going to set it to aperture here. Okay, it was already on aperture. Okay, so anyways, if it's on aperture, of course we just have one dial on a 55 and 5600, so we can just change that dial there. But with this function enabled, we could use it as an aperture control. So I'm going to go ahead and do this. And there you go. You can see I changed my aperture to f9. And you can hear it beeping as I do that. So I'll do it again here. So we're at f9. I'm going to open up a little bit. Okay. There we go, f4. So normally whenever you're shooting, you'll actually see this happen inside the viewfinder. And so once again, this is something I'm surprised Nikon didn't actually tell us about this. It's actually not new on the 5600. It's still on the 55. Apparently, and this is where I need you guys' help, but apparently on the 5500, you could have it set to you could use it to change your ISO. So you could go over here, and we're going to set it to, let's see here. I'm going to set the touch function to my ISO now. ISO sensitivity, okay? Now this is where supposedly the difference happens on the 5600. On the 55, you could change ISO, which is what we're going to do now. You can see we're at ISO 200 currently. Okay, I'm going to bump it up a bit. It's also important to note that this whole touch functionality happens more at the right side of the screen. Okay, you can see it bumped the ISO up. It bumped up to 1250 now. Okay, see, it happens just on the right, by the way. You can see on the left side of the screen, nothing happens. But on this little kind of right half of the screen, that's where it happens. Nothing on the left. Just on the right. Okay? The difference on the 56, though, apparently is that instead of just changing the ISO like I'm doing right now, you can also go into auto ISO. So instead of going like left and right with the swipe, you can go up and down. If you go up, auto ISO is on. And sure enough, you can see now it's flashing ISO A. And I can turn it back off now by swiping down. And I'm holding my hand up there to simulate, me holding the camera up to my face. But sure enough, I swiped down and auto ISO is off. So if you have a D5500, go ahead and get that camera out for me and test this and see if you can turn the auto ISO on and off. But anyways, apparently the difference on the 56 is that you can do it. And on the 55, once again, I wish Nikon had marketed this a little bit better, because I remember seeing some mention of this feature, but never really knew what it was all about. Just like I didn't know what AFP lenses were all about before I tested. So I think Nikon, they need to stop putting all their eggs into like trying to make gee whiz cool features like SnapBridge. And yes, guys, don't get me wrong, SnapBridge is cool, but they need to get their efforts on like making it work right and not marketing it so heavily. And then they need to also not forget about marketing some of these other features that I think people would find very, very useful. Having this touch functionality actually makes this camera much closer to the Rebel T6S in terms of its control layout, because effectively it gives us 2 command dials. So, I mean, Canon marketed the heck out of the fact that the T6S has 2 dials. Nikon should do the same. So, are you listening to me, Nikon? And speaking of the T6S, we'll probably be doing a little bit of comparison between this camera and the T6S in a future video. A lot of people have been wanting me to test some Panasonic cameras. If I ever get my hands on Panasonic cameras, I will certainly do some comparisons. But just know, guys, that I am working on that. The only other difference that I've been able to come up with on this particular camera is that it has a different time-lapse function. And let's see, I was looking at it the other day. I don't remember exactly where it is. But basically, oh yeah, there it is. Basically, on this camera, apparently it can do a time-lapse movie. And once again, you guys can verify that for me if you have a 5500. Apparently you could do time-lapse on the 5500, but on this one you can do like a time-lapse as a movie and kind of export it as a movie file instead of having a sequence of still images. And that's pretty much it from what I can gather between these 2 cameras. Yeah, everything else is pretty much the same. You can see we have Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. And we'll be looking at that in a future video just as soon as Nikon gets their SnapBridge functionality sorted out and working properly. If you guys have any questions, feel free to write me in the comments below. You'll notice there's not a whole ton of sample images or anything for this video, and that's because this camera is not going to be any different. We haven't seen that big image quality change in the cameras in this range so far. Hopefully we'll see that pretty soon, and we'll have something new and exciting to look at sample image wise. Also, guys, a final note, if you're looking to upgrade cameras and say you have an older 5000 series camera, like maybe if you have a 5300, it would definitely be worth it to go to this camera. Although do keep in mind, if you're going from one 5000 series camera to a newer 5000 series camera, or even a 3000 series camera up to the 5000 series, it's not going to be so much of an upgrade since you're essentially still dealing with an entry-level camera. You just kind of have a entry-level camera with more features. If you have an existing older 3000 or 5000 series DSLR and you're looking to upgrade, my recommendation would be to at least look at the 7000 series, like a 71 or 7200, because those cameras are going to give you all this functionality, but you will have a true upgrade in terms of camera. You'll have dual card slots. You'll have a better focusing system and better drive modes and greater lens compatibility and better battery life and more flash capabilities, and on the list goes. So perhaps I'll be making a future video about upgrading DSLRs, but that's just kind of a final note I wanted to leave you guys with. Don't forget to like this video if you like it. Be sure to share. I'll put a link to the 5600 in the description where you can purchase one. Purchasing it from the link in the description definitely helps me out to continue to make future videos. If you're more interested in the type of work I do, photography-wise, be sure to check me out on Facebook or Instagram at PhotogJTheGreat. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. I probably said that twice. Until next time, this is Jeremy Smith, signing off.